So, a pleasant afternoon, everyone. So, now let us report our topic named Culture of Aquatic Commodities and Other High Value Species, together with our group members, Condes K. Hyacinth, Gumiet Jana Bianca, Anastasio Vincent, Sabio Sherwin, and De Los Santos Roland. Next slide, please. So, our table of content includes the introduction, sea cucumber, pompano, sea urchin, pearl, seahorse, sea bass, and last the conclusion. So let's proceed. Next slide, please. Introduction. Exploring six fascinating marine organisms such pearl, pompano, sea cucumber, seahorse, sea urchin, and sea bass. These species are not only vital for the ecosystem but also hold significant economic importance in various industries, including aquaculture and fisheries. By understanding their unique characteristics and roles, we can appreciate their contributions to biodiversity and the livelihoods they support. Next slide, please.
So, sea cucumber or holothurians. So, they are harvested commercially for at least 1,000 years. So, dahil sa kanilang body wall or viscera. Pero mostly, pinaprocess sila into dry product called Bechdemer, Trepang, or Haisan, which is considered as a delicacy and a medicinal food by Asian people, especially the Chinese people. And then, for the taxonomy, within phylum Echinodermata, which is related to sea urchin and uh, starfish. And then class Holothuridia, order Aspidocerotida, and family Holothuridae. So, holothurians usually merong 5 to 6 na orders. But among sa commercially harvested coastal holothurians, meron lamang na dalawa, which is the Aspidocerotida at Dendrocerotida. So Aspidocerotida, they are predominant in tropic regions, while Dendrocerotida, they are common naman sa temperate regions. And then we have here some variants and species. So that fish, which is considered as vulnerable, meaning they are at high risk na siya ay maging endangered. Next is golden sunfish and sunfish, which is already considered as endangered species. Next, we have the Volsic cucumber. Although hindi siya listed as globally endangered, pero considered naman siya as overly exploited. And last, we have the chalkfish. Ito naman is wala pa siyang enough na data about sa kanyang abundance. Next slide. Then, for life history, so adult stages ng sea cucumber are benthic, meaning they are bottom dwellers. They live in the sea bottom, and some of their species are found on hard substrates like corals and rocks, while most of their species ay nasa surface or nakaburied under the sediments. Then, coastal holothurians, larval stages is una, so meron tayo dalawa, so Aspidocerotida and uh, Dendrocerotida. So Aspidocerotida larvae o yung nasa auricularia stage kung saan ang kinakain nila is microalgae sa water. While Dendrocerotida o yung nasa licitotropic stage ng larvae is kumakain naman siya ng built-in lipid yolk kung saan hindi na siya nagre-rely sa external food. Then, after nito, i- it will shrink into 400 to 500 micrometers at magiging Dolaria larvae while undergoing metamorphosis. And then, it will quickly change into pentacular larvae sa loob lamang ng isang araw. And then, saka lamang siya ready to settle sa substratum or sa seafloor. Then, for history, so according to FAO of 2015 or Food and Agriculture in 2015, Food and Agriculture Organization rather of 2015, the Philippines was once become a top producer of dried sea cucumber during the 1980s. Pero ngayon is nasa rank 8 na lamang siya dahil sa annual production niya na less than 900 tons. Next. So, for broodstock is maaari siyang magmula sa wild or from spawning. So, sa wild is kino-collect siya sa mga polyethylene bags na merong naka-attach na oyster or scallop shells at artificial screens as settlements. So, doon siya kinukuha while sa spawning, ah, kinukuha naman siya sa natural stocks. Yung fully matured na broodstocks is yung gagamitin naman siya for gamit collection kung saan need siya i-reared for several months. Then, papakainin naman siya ng brown algae para mag-matured. Then, ready na siya for broodstock production. Next is the hatchery. So, yung fertilized egg sa hatchery is uhugasan siya to remove the excess sperm and then hahayaan na lang siya for about 18 hours without aeration at mapipisa naman siya into blastule kung saan it will swim to the surface of water kung na saka siya pwede i-transfer sa mga rearing tanks kung saan meron siyang density na merong 1 to 2 per milliliter at pakakainin naman siya ng microalgae. Sunod naman is nursery. So, ginagawa siya sa mga mesh enclosures in earthen ponds and kung saan merong two steps na ginagamit. So, una is ginagamitan siya ng fine mesh hapas. So, dito is inilalagay yung mga juveniles na 3 to 5 millimeters ang haba sa fine mesh hapas. And then, sa second step is inilalagay naman yung juvenile na may timbang na 0.15 to 1 gram sa mga larger mesh nets. And then, for place of culture, meron namang dalawang pamamaraan. Yung una is sa China kung saan regularly na tina-transfer sa newly settling plates para mapababa yung mortality ng mga sea cucumber. And then once na ma-reach na yung desired size na 2 to 3 centimeter, ay pwede na siyang i-transfer sa ponds or pwede rin sa pen culture or sea ranching. Samantalang in Japan, yung juveniles naman is tina-transferred sa mga intermediate cultures or nire-release directly sa fishery grounds using mesh lantern nets na inilalagay doon naman yung juveniles na merong sukat na I mean, dito sa mesh lantern nets ay dito naman inilalagay yung mga sea cucumber until ma-reach nila yung sukat na 30 millimeters. And then, next is grow out. So, sa pond is yung recommended naman na density is 30 to 100 sea cucumbers per square meter. O di kaya naman is gumagamit naman tayo ng cages for rearing. Pwede siyang nakahang sa ilalim ng raft or nasa seafloor. And then sa pagpapakain naman, pinapakain naman siya ng brown seaweeds or other microalgae. So, in terms of microalgae, tulad ng diatom, so yan, example siya ng microalgae. And sa pagpapalaki naman ng juveniles, so once na 6 centimeter size na siya and 10 grams, pwede na siya i-release from March to May and then papalakihin siya doon. Saka once na ma-reach na yung 150 grams or ma-reach na yung 150 grams sa buwan ng October to November. So, yung months na yon ay nasa loob lamang ng isang taon. So, next is optimal parameters. So, these optimal parameters ay crucial naman siya for effective growth and overall health of sea cucumber. For water parameters, temperature like 26 to 32 degrees. So, yung lalampas dito sa temperature na to is maaari siyang mag-cause ng stress or hibernation sa mga sea cucumbers. While salinity is, preferred niyang salinity is 30 to 35 parts per thousand. While for pH, 7.8 to 8.5. And the DO is required is higher than the 5 to 6 milligrams per liter. And as for the substrates na parameter, so meron tayong composition ng substratum like meron siyang mixture ng sandy or muddy with amount of organic matter. And then sa substratum is made din na meron siyang malapit siya sa seagrass for shelter and trapping ng for, for shelter and trapping ng foods. And then sa water flow naman is ang nire-required is normal and moderate kung saan para maging suitable yung pag-rearing ng sea cucumber for sea ranching. Next reporter.
Let's proceed naman po sa kung paano or yung Tranchenotus blanchi. The subnose pompano is characterized by its streamlined silver body with a distinctly blunt snout and dark green or blue upper side, adorned with yellow stripe and a black blotch on the gill cover. This fish typically grows up to 60 centimeters in length and is known for its strong, fast-swimming abilities, making it a popular target for sport fishing. Yan yung pampano nga daw po is fish siya na merong shiny silver body and flat blunt nose. Yung upper part niya, pag nakikita niyo yung mga pampano, yung upper part niya is meron siyang dark green or blue na merong yellow stripes and black spot dun malapit sa gills niya. Then yung fish na yun is kaya niya mag-grow hanggang 60 centimeter. Then kilala rin siya for fast swimming, kaya nagiging popular choice siya for sport fishing. Then in terms naman sa classification, it belongs to the phylum Chordata, class Actinopterygii, order Perciformes, and family Carangidae. Next slide. Ayan. Yung life history naman ng pampano, yung yung fish na yan is belong siya sa genus Tranchenotus and part siya ng jack family which is called Carangidae. Then it was first described by a scientist, yan si Germain D. Lasifidae noong 1801. Then yung fish na yan is nakatira siya sa mga warm waters. Makikita siya sa mga place gaya ng Indian Oceans, Red Sea, and part of the Central Pacific Ocean. Then, yung natural habitat ng young snub-nosed pompano, yung mga young is nakastay sila dun sa mga sandy areas and shallow bays malapit sa mga river. Then, as they grow up, yung mga adult fish is mas prepare nila mag-swim around clear coral and rock reefs further out in the oceans. Then pagdating naman dun sa mga adults na pumpano, mas sila tend to be solitary. So meaning, mas gusto nilang mag-isa rather than in groups. They mainly eat sand mollusks and other hard-shell sea creatures. Then yung subnose pumpano naman is interesting fish that plays a role in its ecosystem. Nakokontrol dito yung population of its prey. Its unique features and behavior make it a fascinating subject for both scientists and fishermen. Then, next. Then, pagdating naman sa top producer, yung fish kasi nito is popular siya for farming. Kilala siya as mariculture. Yung type kasi ng fish farming, nangyayari siya in different environments, including open sea cage, brackish water cage, and ponds. Yung countries gaya ng China, India, Indonesia, Philippines, at saka Thailand, and also yung Vietnam, sila yung main producer ng snub-nosed pompano. Sa Vietnam, yung method na ginagamit nila para sa fish na yun is open sea cage are well developed. Yung many small farmers, yung mga private companies involved in commercial farming of snub-nosed pompano. Yung pagpa-farm kasi ng snub-nosed pompano is nakakatulong siya para maka-provide ng steady supply of fish for markets and restaurants, making it an important part of the local economy. Then yung pagpa-farm kasi ng snub-nosed pompano is very beneficial. Bakit? Kasi it can help meet the demand for seafood while reducing pressure on wild fish production. Ito, nagpo-provide, kasi yung pagpa-farm din na snub-nosed pompano is nagpo-provide din siya ng job para sa mga maraming tao sa pangangisda and aquaculture industries. Then yung mariculture ng snub-nosed pompano is a growing and important practice in several countries. Then pagdating naman sa broodstock, yan yung snub-nosed pompano is nagte-take siya ng 3 to 4 years para mag-grow up and become mature enough para magamit siya as broodstock. Then yung fish na yan is nagki-keep yun na yung fish na yan, kung yung broodstock na siya, yun na yung kinikip for breeding naman. Yung mga wild-caught broodstock weigh more than 1 kilo. They can be helped to mature faster by adjusting light and temperature condition. Then yung process na yun is known as photothermal regulations. Once na yung eggs inside dun sa fish is nag-reach siya ng size na 450 to 500 microns, yung hormones na gaya ng gonadotropin releasing hormones or yung human chorionic gonadotropin, pwede siyang gamitin para ma-encourage yung fish to spawn. Then allowing them to produce new baby fish. This process is important for successful fish farming and help ensure a steady supply of snub-nosed pompano. Then, next naman is sex determination. Sa sex determination naman, yung mga snub-nosed pompano is can be done by a method called cannulation, biopsy. Ibig sabihin, yung process na yun is involves taking a small sample ng mga eggs ng pompano from inside the fish ovaries. Then, by examining yung mga eggs na yun, yung mga scientists, pwede nilang masabi na whether yung fish na pwedeng nung pompano is male or female, which is important for breeding and fish farming. Then, next naman is spawning. Then, yung pompano is often breed in hatcheries using hormones like HCG or LHRH analogs to help the fish eggs mature. After ng fish na ma-receive yung hormone injection na yun, yung in-inject dun sa fish, yung spawning usually happens 36 to 48 hours later. And then yung mga high-quality eggs can be collected from the water surface. Once yung fish gonads are naging mature, yung eggs can be gathered either naturally or through method called manual stripping, which allows for better control over the timing and produce buoyant, clear fertilized eggs that are good for hatching. Next po is yung hatchery. Una, yung sa hatching. Yung snub-nosed is, yung mga eggs ng snub-nosed is piniplace siya dun sa mga large tanks. Na yung tanks na yun is kaya nyo mag-hold ng water na 3 to 5 tons ng water. Then yung each tank na yun, meron siyang 200 to 500 eggs for every liter of water. After that, kapag nalagay na yung mga eggs dun sa tanks, after 18 to 24 hours, yung is pwede na siyang i-hatch into tiny larvae. Once they hatch, larvae na yon is imumove siya dun sa clean seawater tanks where they can grow safely. Then yung tanks na yon is ano siya, made of strong fiberglass para maging safe and durable. To help the larvae, dun sila nilalagay para ma-help yung mga larvae na mag-grow well. They need grow well, kailangan nila ng enough space. So, yung mga larvae, kapag na-move na sila sa smaller tanks, they should be 20 to 30 larvae for every liter of water. Dun sa paraan na yon, pag nalipat na yung mga larvae, they have enough more rooms to swim and develop properly. Next naman is nursery. Sa nursery stage, yung mga subnose pompano is kinikiting cage or yung tinatawag na hapa nets. 4 meters long, 4 meters wide, and 3 meters deep dun sa water. Then kapag yung mga fish na yan is umabot na siya ng 25 to 30 days old, nila sa mga cage. The stocking density is about 30 to 50 fish for every cubic meter of water, and the fish are usually between 0.5 to 10 inches long. Then, kapag yung hatchery nila, they stay in the nursery for about a month. During this time, yung mga nilagay dun sa cage na yun is mag-grow sila until ma-reach nila yung size na 120 to 150 grams, which is considered juvenile size. This help prepare them for the next stage of their growth. Next naman is grow out. Yung pagdating naman sa grow out, yung mga snub-nose pompano are nire-raise na sila sa mga floating cage na gawa sa mga matitibay na HDP nets. This cage are placed in calm and safe waters like coves, lagoons, and bays. At first, yung mga net is ginagamitan sila ng nets na merong maliliit na holes. Kaya after ng ilang months or 3 months, binabago nila yung net na meron ng malalaking holes. This helps more water flow through, which is better for the fish. The figures naman, which are between 0.5 to 15 inch long, mainly come from hatcheries. In the grow-out cage, there are about 30 fish for every cubic meter of water. Yung fish na yan is stay in this stage for about 4 to 7 months. During this time, they grow bigger and stronger until they are ready for harvest. Next slide. Yan, optimum parameters. Yung pagdating sa salinity, yung kailangang level ng salt na meron sa water para sa pag-aalaga ng snub-nose, dapat lang siya 30 to 35 ppt or parts per thousand. Kailangan 30 to 50 parts per thousand para yung water is magkaroon ng good amount of salt for fish para makapag-thrive sila. The next is temperature is 27 to 30 degrees Celsius. Ginagamit yung range na 27 to 30 para maging comfortable yung fish and makatulong para mag-grow sila. Then, dissolved oxygen is 6.0 to 7.6 milligrams per liter. Para yung fish nila is yung dissolved oxygen, ginagamit syempre sila ng fish para makahinga, to breathe. So, this is very important. Next naman is depth for mariculture, 5 to 7.5 meters. Then, yung deep naman is nakakatulong naman yan para mag-provide ng good environment para doon sa mga fish na snub-nose pompano. Ilang po. Next reporter.
Hello everyone. Our next commodities is sea urchin. So what is sea urchin? Sea urchins are marine invertebrates in the class Echinoidea, known for their globular bodies and spiny teeth. Hard shells. They are found in all oceans and depths, moving with tube feet and spines in Aristoteles and feeding primarily on algae using a unique jaw-like structure called Aristotle's lantern. While they possess a formidable defense system, many species also have a row that is considered a delicacy in various cultures. So yun yung sea urchin. Karamihan sa atin familiar na dito, lalo na yung mga nasa tabing dagat. Ito yung isa sa pinakamahal na commodities sa buong mundo, yung sea urchin. Delicacy ito doon, lalo na sa Japan. At ang karaniwan nitong kinakain ay yung mga algae sa dagat. Tapos yan, ganyan yung itsura nila sa picture sa kanan. Sige, next. Yung sea urchin, ang mga sea urchin sa ngayong panahon, overfish na. Dahil nga yun, mahal, tapos hindi naman kayang i-produce ng mga tao. Nakakapag-produce nito yung mga tao, yung nagko-culture ang mga tao nito, kaso hindi perfect yung culture nila. Kakaunti yung nagagawa nilang ganitong product sa productions. At ini-export ito dun sa mga bansa na katulad sa Japan, sa Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Korea. Meron din dito sa atin sa Pilipinas na sea urchin. Nag-i-export din tayo nito. Sa Japan, ang tinatawag nila ito kadalasan yung oni or yung raw, yung gonads, yung kulay dilaw na parang mga itlog. Yun yung edible parts nung sea urchin. Yun yung ginagawang product tapos ini-export. At sa naman, para malaman kung anong sex nung sea urchin dun sa sa gonads nga, dun sa raw o yung oni, yung laman niya, dun natin malalaman kung lalaki o babae yung sea urchin. Kapag babae yung sea urchin, kulay orange yung oni niya o yung raw. Kapag lalaki naman, yellow. Sa taxonomy naman ng sea urchin, ito ay sa phylum Echinodermata, class Echinoidea, and order Camarodonta, family of Toxoneutidae, species of Trypneustes gratilia. Itong Trypneustes gratilia, ito yung kadalasan dito sa atin sa Pilipinas. Yung sea urchin na hindi matatalas yung spine niya, tapos hindi siya ganun kahaba. Yun yung madalas na ini-export dito sa Pilipinas. And yung mga substitute naman dito sa atin, yung mga Diatema, Cytosum, and Echinotrix diadema. Yan, ganyan yung sea urchin na nasa picture sa kanan. Yung mahaba yung spine niya, tapos kadalasan kulay itim. Next slide. Sa life history naman po ng sea urchin, sa simula pa lang, nung simulang ma-develop yung sea urchin o malaman na nakakain, ini-export na kaagad to sa iba't ibang bansa. Yung top producers naman ito is sa Japan, South Korea, Ireland, Norway, Scotland, and Canada. Yun yung mga top producers, lalo na sa commercial juvenile, yung nagpaproduction ng sea urchin, yung nagpapadami o nagkukulture. Sa akin naman po ay Edichinus chloroticus. Yun ang karaniwan na sea urchin na makikita natin sa New Zealand, and sa ibang species naman, yung mga purple sea urchin is Heliosidaris erythrogama. Chilean red sea urchin naman is Lochinus albus. Yan yung mga iba't ibang klase ng sea urchin na kilalang bilang edible o nagiging export product ng iba't ibang bansa. Sige po, next. Sa life history po rin po, ito yung life stage of sea urchins. Nagsisimula sila sa adults, pinoproduce ng adults, yung gametes, simula sa gametes, embryo, prism, tapos Yan, nasa algae form sila sa hanggang gametes, embryo hanggang 4-armed luteus. Tapos 6-armed luteus hanggang maging juvenile. Sunod ng juvenile, adult na, and another circle na naman. Yun po yung life cycle ng or life stage ng sea urchins. Next stage po. Eggs and larvae. Paano nga ba nadidevelop ang sea urchin? Eggs develop into Plutus larvae. Yun nga, yung eggs ng sea urchin is nadidevelop into Plutus larvae. At ang larval duration nito, yung oras bago maging larvae is 1 month. 1 month ang maximum. At dapat ang pagdedevelopan nito o yung temperature ng tubig na pagpaproduction na ito is 26 to 28 Celsius. And sa planktonic stage naman, ito na yung napisa na sila. Talagang dito na yung nagsisimula na sila magkaroon ng mga spines. Simula sa 4-arm, 6 hanggang 8 is magiging na sila, competent larvae. Diyan kumakain na sila ng mga microalgae, tapos yung mga planktons. Yun ang kinakain nila kapag nasa planktonic stage pa din sila. Settlement and metamorphosis are critical stage. Dito naman sa settlement and metamorphosis, dito na sila yung, di ba yung sea urchins ay plankton. Ibig sabihin nun, pag plankton pa sila, inaanod pa sila ng tubig o ng dagat kung saan sila napapadpad. Dito sa settlement and metamorphosis, dito na sila pipermi sa isang lugar. Kunwari sa mga corals or dun sa mga halamang dagat, doon na sila didikit. At dito na yung critical stages nila. Metamorphosis induced by coralline red algae extract and Chaetoceros. Yan yung nagiging pagkain nila o yung tinitirhan nila. Diyan sila kadalasan nabubuhay sa madaming coralline red algae and Chaetoceros. Pag magpa-production naman tayo nito, yung magkukulture tayo nito ng artificial, ang gagamitin natin is red algae extract tapos Chaetoceros 50-50 yung ratio. At nagpa-production nga pala nito pag sa culturing sa mga container na malilinis, yung may mga filtered seawater. Juveniles grown on coralline algal stones for 3 months. Yan na nga. Yung mga plankton na nag-metamorphosis and settlement, nagiging juveniles na sila dun sa pinag-settlement nila o pinagtigilan nila. Doon na sila nagiging juveniles. At kinakain nila yung mga algae doon sa mga nakadikit sa bato. Next slide. Yan, kapag naging juvenile naman sila, yun na nga yung mga microalgae na nakadikit dun sa mga batong tinitira nila o mga seaweeds na tinitira nila, yun yung nagiging pagkain nila. At ang grow out naman ito, yung magiging ready to market na sila, ang time nito ay 1 to 3 years. Depending on species pa yun. Depende pa sa species nila. Pero maximum na yung 3 years. 1 to 3 years ang pinaka ideal market size nila. Doon na sila lalaki, talagang pwede nang ibenta o export. And sa adult naman, kapag naging adult na sila, doon mag-develop na din yung nila, yung sexual hormones nila. And separate sexes broadcast spawners. Nagiging na din sila. Nagpo-produce na din sila ng mga itlog. Nagiging breeders. Gametes released into sea water for external fertilization. Pag naging adults na sila, tapos develop na yung reproduction system nila, nagre-release na din sila ng gametes. Yung pag-fertilize nila, yung dalawang sea urchin, yung female and male, yung male, magbubuga lang siya ng egg sa tubig. Same naman yun sa male. Yung female magbubuga ng egg, tapos yung male magbubuga naman ng sperm. Tapos doon na magmi-meet sa tubig yung egg and the sperm nila. Tapos mapifertilize. Next po. Sa broodstock naman, yung age at maturity, yung mature na sea urchins is nasa about 6 centimeters ang laki, at ito naman ay nasa 15 months yun. Yung 6 centimeters na yun, lumalaki yun about 15 months. Sex determination naman, ito ang mahirap sa kanila. Hindi mo makikilala yung lalaki at babae kung hindi mo sila i-examine na masyado. Kasi malalaman natin yun dun sa kanilang row. Dun sa laman nila, yung uni, yung edible part nila. Yung kaninang orange and yellow. Kapag may female, orange, and kapag male, yellow. Yun yung sex determination nila. And sa spawning naman, ang peak spawning nito o yung seasonal nito is December to January. Yan yung dumadami sila, naglalabasan sila yan. And kapag naman tayo, nagpa-production naman tayo o nagkukulture tayo ng ganitong mga sea urchins, ginagamit ng mga mga nagkukulture nito, yung mga culturist, tinuturo kanila yung lalaki, tapos babaeng sea urchin, tinuturo kanila ng 0.5 milliliters of potassium chloride. Parang sa isda din, para makapaglabas sila ng itlog tapos sperm. Tapos yun, yung pag natapos na yun, eggs collected in FSW or filtered seawater. Ilalagay na yung itlog dun sa may container na merong filtered seawater o yung na-filter na tubig alat. Tapos doon na nilalagyan ng sperm sperm pipetted from genital pores. Yun, yung nakuha sa lalaking sea urchins, doon na natin ilalagay. Tapos dapat ay fertilization with controlled sperm concentration. Dapat na tama lang yung dami ng sperm na ilalagay natin. Sa hatching naman o hatchery, fertilized eggs hatch in 10 to 15 hours into ciliated blastula. Yun na nga, sa mga container o ciliated blastula, nag-hatch yung itlog o napifertilize yung itlog about 10 to 15 hours. Tapos doon fertilize na yun, magiging plankton. And sa culturing naman, large scale culture practice in Japan, yun. Yung may pinakamalaking culture practices is sa Japan. Tapos sa large scale na yun, yung millions of juveniles produced annually for reseeding, para mapadami nila. Ang napoproduce nilang mga itlog o mga juveniles is million. So, over 6 million juveniles released, majority strongly lucentritous. Doon sa pagla large scale culture nila ng sea urchin, umabot ng 66 million juveniles ang nare-release nila, at karamihan dito yung mga purple and red sea urchins. Yan nga yung strongly lucentritous. Yan yung mga purple and red sea urchins. Next, sa optimum parameters naman, yun nga, sa pag mag-production tayo nito, magko-culture, kailangan yung temperature natin tama lang. Hindi lalampas sa 20, hindi bababa ng 20, at hindi din lalampas ng 25 Celsius. Sa salinity naman, dapat yung alat ng tubig natin nasa 30 to 54 ppt lang. Ayan, dissolved oxygen 6 mg per liter. Sa pH naman 7.8 to 8.3. Tsaka dapat ang tubig natin is low ammonia and nitrate. Mababa yung ammonia at nitrate natin. Next po. Yun lang po. Next reporter na po.
Audible po ba ako? Yan. So, let's jump up sa next topic, which is pearl. So, pearl's basic information is Almost all species of mollusk are capable of producing pearl-like object, technically termed the calcareous concretions. So, calcareous concretions, ito yung mga hard compact masses ng calcium carbonate, which is yun nga yung nagbubuo sa pearl. However, those of value and interest as gemstones are limited to those produced by species capable of secreting nacre, or mother of pearl. So, sinabi nga na almost naman na lahat ng shell is pwedeng mag-produce ng pearl. Pero limited lang talaga yung nakakapag-produce ng mga high-value gemstone na pearl, which is yun yung mga may existing na nacre or yung tinatawag nga na mother of pearl. So pearl are under the phylum Mollusca. So mollusca, we all know that mollusca or mollusk are the phylum that invertebrates, which means wala silang backbone. Group sila ng animals ng walang backbones. Then class bivalva or bivalves, which has a two shells na may dong abductor muscle na hink together para sa kanilang mechanism din sa protection. Order Ostrida and family Theridae. So let's move on to the age at maturity. Mamaya itatakal natin ng live story, pero dito muna tayo sa age at maturity. So ang oyster, nagiging mature lang isang pearl oyster kapag umabot na sila ng 2 years. So, hindi mo sila masasabi na mature pag hindi sila lumampas dun sa 2 years na yon. Constant dapat yon kasi may mga nurturing pa ng nucleus na nangyayari. So, doon nyo lang masasabi na mature ang isang pearl kapag naglampas na sila sa 2 years. Pwede na din sila dong i-graft. So, days of culture. So, after an inspection, 40 days after grafting to evaluate the results, the pearl oyster are kept on the farm for further 12 to 24 months. So, next slide po. So, yon. Let's tackle the next slide po. Balik po tayo mamaya sa species environment. Sa history po muna tayo. Yon. So, life history. So, pearl cultivation began in China during the Song Dynasty. Later refined in Japan in the early 90s by Kokichi Mikomoto, which is si Kokichi Mikomoto, siya yung father ng modern cultured pearl production. Sa Philippines naman, Hikari SSP Corporation continues this tradition, producing high-quality golden South Sea pearls with Japanese-trained technician. So dito sa Hikari SSP Corporation, so parang inadapt to sa Pilipinas, which is nag-hired sila ng mga Japanese pearl technicians, which is sila yung nagko-cultivate or naglalagay ng nucleus and nag-nurture. Well, basically, nagko-culture na rin para makapag-release or makapag-produce ng mga pearl, which is napaka-high demand talaga pagdating sa market. So, late in the 13th century, so after ng Song Dynasty, which is sinundan siya ng Ming Dynasty, is kung sinimulan nung Song Dynasty, sa Ming Dynasty naman, dito naman na-produce yung mga pearl Buddhas. Yung mga pearl Buddhas na yon is gamit yung mga pearl, ginagawa nila na yung statue ng Buddha, which is yun yung parang worship nila, which is binebenta nila yon sa mga temple markets which is doon din naman sila nakita, and mga mahal din, sobrang expensive din pag tininda na nila sa market. So yon, isa sa mga top producers is China, Japan, Australia, Indonesia, French Polynesia, Cook Island, Philippines, India, Sri Lanka, Myanmar, Thailand, Malaysia, and Mexico. Yes, kasama ang Philippines. So, perm farm in the Philippines, Siargao, Samar, Sulu, Tawi-Tawi, Sorsogon, and Cebu. It can be a major livelihood generation program in Region 9, Zamboanga Peninsula and Autonomous Region for Muslim Mindanao or ARMM. So kung mapapansin nyo, yung mga pearl farm in the Philippines is karaniwan siya dun sa may mga magagandang sites, katulad ng Palawan, ng Tawi-Tawi ng Sulu. So kung saan magta-thrive ng maayos and mag-grow ng maganda yung mga pearl para maganda siyang i-present sa market. So next slide please. Now, back po tayo sa species and variant. So yon, so let's proceed to pearl species and variants. So we have two group of a mother of pearl. First, we have the freshwater, the Unionidae or the Margaritiferae. Next is the marine pearl oyster, which is called the Peridae. So let's start with marine pearl oyster. So first is the Akoya pearl oyster or the Pinctata pucata or the martensi. So Akoya pearl oyster is most commonly used for commercial pearl production kasi nga it is one of the desired gem in the world kasi mayroon siyang mga bright luster, vibrant and variety of tones or kulay. Meron siyang white, meron siyang cream, blue, pink, and the most specially and pinipilahan is yung silver pearl niya. It can thrive in cooler waters or may low temperature and native siya sa Indo-Pacific region. So next is the black lake pearl oyster. So its name came from its own characteristics. So kung makikita nyo, meron siyang black coloring along the margins of the interior of the shell. Makikita nyo dyan sa picture, yung edge niya is may black, which is kinonsider nila as lip. So that's why they call it the black lip pearl oyster or the Pinctada margaritifera. So it has a first cultivation sa French Polynesia in 1961. And mayroon siyang iridescent color that covered the entire spectrum of light. So kung makikita niyo yung pearl niyan, kung i-zoom out niyo yan, kung makikita niyo, sobrang ganda ng pearl niyan. As in, nagkakahawig siya dun sa shell niya. Hindi siya yung ordinary na shell or pearl na makikita mo, or yung white, yung cream, hindi. Makikita nyo siya, napaka-vibrant niya. Then, yun nga, spectrum. So, yun. The third is the silver or gold lip pearl. So, kung yung isa is black lip pearl oyster, ito naman ay silver or gold lip pearl oyster, which is kagaya din nung kanina, makikita nyo din yung edge niya is silver or gold. Pwede siyang nagtatribe siya sa mga rocky, tas yung mga grabahan sa ilalim or let's say atolls, yon sa mga bottom reefs environment. It has a white color of the bulb edge and silver gold color from the pearl that they have produced. So next, or the number 4 is the wing pearl oyster or the penguin wings oyster or the Theria penguin. It is the Japanese name mabigai and is traditionally used for half pearl or mabi production. Yun, yung mabigay, ma-amaze kayo sa mabigay because unlike the usual pearl na bilog, siya ay half. As in, para siyang, yung other side niya is half, then yung other side niya is, yun yung parang pa-oval. Ma-amaze din kayo dun sa pinakang shell niya kasi para talaga siyang pakpak. That's why it called the winged pearl oyster or penguin wings oyster. So, let's proceed to the freshwater pearl mussel. So, ito, nag-iisa to unlike sa mga marine pearl oyster na 4. So, it is called the triangle sail mussel or the Hygriopsis comingi, which is important for commercial freshwater pearl farming due to its ability to produce smooth, round, and high-quality pearls. Ito naman, endemic siya sa China and meron siyang triangle-like shape shell, kaya tinawag siyang triangle sail mussel. So kung makikita niyo yan, kung isusum out niyo yung nasa picture or nasa PPT, yan, triangle talaga siya. Next please. Yes, the pearl formation. So dito sa pearl formation, we have two. First is the cultured pearl production, and second is the natural pearl production. So let's all tackle first kung paano nag-form ang pearl. So ang pearl ay nag-form once na na-injured. Yes, nagpo-form ang pearl once na na-injured na yung oyster. Once na napasukan na siya ng sediment. So, kagaya ng tao, syempre ikukuyur niya yung sarili niya. Kumbaga sa atin, meron tayong white blood. Magsisikret sila ng tinatawag na nacre. Magsisikret sila nun. Once na nagsikret na sila nun, dun sa pearl sac, yon, unti-unti na dong mabuild up yung calcium carbonate, which is yun yung nagko-compose para mabuo yung pearl. So let's proceed to the cultured pearl production. We have 5. First is the oyster selection. So in oyster selection, we have 2 sources. First is the collection from the wild. Then second is produced spot juveniles through artificial propagation. So, dito naman sa oyster selection, so mahalaga to para syempre ito yung stepping stone para makapag-produce tayo ng oyster. So, dito hahanap tayo ng suitable na paglalagyan ng nucleus, which is matatopic natin mamaya. Yung suitable na paglalagyan ng nucleus, which is juvenile pa naman, yung kuhanap tayo ng juvenile na oyster para paglagyan ng nucleus. So, yun yung oyster selection. Second is the nucleus implanting. So, dito sa nucleus implanting, ito yung key step. Kasi, ang cultured pearl production kasi, as we all know, controlled siya. So, magkakaroon talaga tayo ng nucleus implanting. So, implantation of tiny piece of mantle tissue called a graft. So, dito, from donor oyster, so from one oyster, which is yun yung donor natin, kukuha tayo doon ng isang maliit na tissue or mantle tissue na tinatawag na graft. Then, i-remove yun doon. Then, ililipat natin yun doon sa paglalagyan. Another oyster na paglalagyan, which is yun na yung magbe-bear ng nucleus or ng pearl. Kukuha tayo from donor ng mantle tissue. Ilalagay natin doon sa isa pang oyster na magke-carry ng pearl. So, it is a key step in culturing pearl. So, a piece of mantle tissue called graft is removed from one suitable donor oyster and i-implant with a spherical polished shell bead or nucleus into a gonad of the host oyster. So, from the donor oyster, kukuha tayo ng nucleus or ng mantle tissue, i-implant natin sa another oyster, which is yun na yung magiging host para makapag-create ng pearl. Then, third is the nurturing. So, after implanting, it needs to be carefully nurtured in a resting zone for at least 2 weeks. So, after implanting, syempre, dito na magaganap yung adoption. Critical period for mortality and nucleus rejection. So, dito sa nurturing, papasok yung kung mare-reject ba nung host oyster yung nucleus na kinuha or inimplant sa kanya from the donor oyster. So, once na kunwari hindi ni-reject nung oyster na pinaglagyan ng donor ng host oyster yung nucleus na kinuha dun sa donor oyster, it means suitable talaga siya, and yun, as years passed by, makakapag-create na siya ng pearl. So, next step is the harvesting. So, harvesting, ito na yung pinaka-crucial part din, kasi after nurturing, nalaman mo na, ay, hindi na-reject nung host oyster yung implantation ng nucleus. So, does that means, aantayin natin for 2 years. Kaya nga nang sabi ko kanina, magiging matured lang or pwede mong i-harvest yung pearl dun sa loob ng oyster kapag lumipas na yung 2 years. Kasi matured na sila doon, na-create na doon. Ganun katagal yung process ng paggagawa ng pearl sa loob ng oyster. Kaya din siguro expensive sa market kasi yung process pa lang ng paggagawa niya and yung pag-i-implant ng nucleus is napakatagal talaga. Kaya gano'n na lang din siya kamahal. So yon, harvesting. Colder conditions are the best time to harvest pearl. So yon, kagaya nga ng sabi ko kanina, nagtatribe talaga sila sa cooler condition or cooler temperature. So harvesting is denucleated oyster are generally cultured for a further 1 to 2 years before resulting marine pearls. Yon, makukuha mo lang talaga yung pearl doon sa oyster na yon after 1 to 2 years. So, thus, after these years, it will be ready to harvest. So, ready to harvest na after 1 to 2 years. So, next is the pearl processing. So, raw pearls may have to process to improve their quality to meet the standard of gem quality merchandise. Pearl processing techniques may include screening, degreasing, decontamination, bleaching, whitening, coloring, etc. So, yun, hindi naman agad-agad siya minamarket. So, kailangan siyang magkaroon ng, or kailangan niyang dumaan sa mga cleaning process, which is, yun, nabanggit na nga dito. Kailangan yun kasi para mapa-increase yung, yung quality niya, and yun din, para presentable siya kapag i-market na. So yon, let's proceed to the natural production of pearl. Next slide, please. Natural pearl production. So first is presence of nucleus. Presence of nucleus kasi hindi gaya sa culture production is nag-i-implant, 'di ba? Kanina sabi ko, nag-i-implant, naglalagay ng nucleus doon sa host oyster para makapag-create ng pearl, which is dito naman sa natural pearl production is opposite kasi may presence na nucleus mismo sa kanya. It can be of organic or inorganic origin. Foreign body is originated by the outer epithelium of the mantle and a pearl sac is formed around it. When nacres secreting epithelial cell are transferred into the viscera by accidental means can be distinguished from the cultured pearls by X-ray that will reveal no nucleus or curved cavity structure in the center of the pearl. So dito naman, wala namang kailangang i-stress out kasi kagaya nga ng sabi ko kanina, kung yung cultured production is controlled, dito sa natural pearl production is accidental. So kung kanina sa culture pearl production is 'di ba sabi ko, kailangang ma-injured ng oyster para makapag-secrete ng nacre. So sa cultured pearl production, sinasadya ng mga pearl technician na sugatan yung mga pearls, which is yun na nga yung nucleus implanting, para makapag-secrete sila dun sa pearl sac ng tissue para ma-create yung pearl. Well, dito naman sa natural pearl production, dahil nga hindi siya man-made, hindi siya control, mayroon na talaga siyang presence ng nucleus. So accidental kasi minsan nagko-cause siya, minsan ang nagiging cause niya is yung napapasukan ng mga sediments, yung mga sands, and yung mga parasites minsan na pumapasok mismo doon sa oyster, which is nagkokos siya ng injuries doon sa pearl, which is naglilid naman siya para mag-secrete yung nacre ng doon sa pearl sac ng tissue para makapag-form ng pearl. So, kagaya din kanina doon sa pearl cultured production, dito sa natural pearl production is we have six stages. First is the layers enters the mollusk. So, dito naman sa layers enters the mollusk, ito na nga yung mga parasite na pumasok dun sa mollusk, which is nagkakos ng injury. Mantle form a pearl sac. So, once nga na bilang response dun sa injury na yon, yung mantle tissue ng oyster, magpo-form na siya ng pearl sac, which is doon na nangyayari yung production or yung build up ng carbon carbonate, which is yun yung nagiging pearl. Then, yung nacre secretion begin. So, yun, nagsisimula ng mag-release ng mga carbon carbonate na parang nagbi-build up na para maging pearl. Then, yun, resulting layers build up na nga. Then, resulting pearl, which is after nun na walang control or hindi control ng tao, naturally makakapag-result siya ng vibrant color ng pearl. So, next slide please. So, yun. Dito naman tayo sa grow out. Actually, wala talaga to dun sa mga past reporter, wala tong juvenile paste, wala tong larval paste. Diretso na siya sa grow out paste. So, sa grow out paste naman, meron tayong area for culture. So, dalawa lang yung area for culture natin, which is the rough culture and the on-bottom culture. So, dito sa rough culture, para siyang, alam niyo yung in aquaculture, yung hanging method. Ganon siya. Naka-hanging method siya, which is nag-aantay na lang ng yung rough culture are moored with anchors at opposite side with tested quality chain, and their direction is decided according to the prevalent wind direction at the specific site. While yung on-bottom culture naman, sea bottom with a granite or coral stones composition, coral stone composition can be used for on-bottom culture. So, yun dito, sa on-bottom culture, kung yung rough culture is parang hanging method siya, which is nakakabit na yung oyster dun sa nakahang, nag-aantay na lang ng mga spot. Dito naman sa on-bottom culture is, naman siya, kasama siya ng mga, sabihin na nating, mga gravel sa ilalim ng environment. Yun. Pero, sa dalawang area for culture na to, ang suitable talaga is yung rough culture. Kasi sa on-bottom culture, hindi madaling lumaki or hindi madaling mag-grow. Kung mag-grow man, is hindi siya nakakapag-produce ng pearl dito sa on-bottom culture. Hindi man siya nakakapag-produce, basta hindi ganun ka-quality yung napuproduce niyang pearl pag nasa on-bottom culture. So, sa lahat ng mga nagko-culture ng pearl, lalo na dito sa atin sa Pilipinas, mas pinipili nilang area for culture or yung technology para makapag-culture ng pearl is yung rough culture. So, optimum parameters. So, first is the salinity. So, nakakapag-tolerate ang mga oyster pearl with a salinity of 24 to 50 parts per thousand. In terms naman sa temperature, so kagaya nga ng sabi ko, mas nagtatribe sila sa lower temperature, which is 20 to 25 Celsius. In terms naman sa dissolved oxygen, walang nakalagay dyan, pero nagtatribe ang mga pearl oyster sa 5.0 to 8.6 milligram per liter ng dissolved oxygen. Sa depth naman, prepare nila yung around 15 meter from the surface. Sa ano naman, dito naman sa bottom, sinasabi lang naman dito sa bottom na mas prepare ng mga oyster yung clear water. Kasi hindi sila masyadong yung filtration ng water, kaya mas gusto nila yung clear water. And gravely bottoms are suitable. So yun nga, kagaya ng sabi ko kanina, yung mga may bato-bato, mas prepare nila yon kesa sa sandy and muddy. Kasi pag yung mga gravely tapos yung mga may mga rocky ganon, mas parang secure or may ma-attach yan sila nung body nila para for protection na din. Yun. Yun lang po. Next reporter, please.
Seahorse or hippocampus in scientific name. So yung mga seahorse is most commonly ay kahawig ng mga ulo ng kabayo, which is din may buntot din sila, nakikita naman sa picture ay. Yung buntot naman nila ay ginagamit nila pang kapit or panglangoy din. Yung mga seahorse naman nakatira sa mga shallow coastal waters din. Isa sa kakaiba sa mga seahorse, yung kanilang reproductive system is ang nagdadala ng itlog ng mga babae, yung mga lalaki, which nilalagay nila doon sa pouch hanggang sa mapisa. Taxonomy, phylum Chordata, class Actinopterygidae, order Signathiformes, family Signathidae, genus Hippocampus, species Coda japonicus, Primacutus, Coronatus, Hystrix, and Kelogi. Next slide. Sa history naman, yung mga seahorse naman is nanganganib na maubos globally, which is yung malawakang binibigta ito. Tapos umaabot yung mga nahuli na seahorse is 24 million kada isa kada taon sa buong bansa. Tapos isa sa malaking nanguna sa pagkuha ng mga seahorse is yung China. Ginagamit nila yun para gawing medicines. Tapos yung iba naman hinuhuli para ilagay sa aquarium. Yung mga top producer naman ay yung Australia, China, India, Indonesia, New Zealand, United States of America, and Vietnam. Ito naman yung mga species and variants na posibleng maubos na yung mga species. Great seahorse, hedgehog seahorse, three-spot seahorse, spotted seahorse, lined seahorse, Japanese seahorse, giant seahorse, Barbour seahorse, Patagonian seahorse, thorny seahorse, tiger tail seahorse, West African seahorse. So, tapos ito naman yung malapit na talagang maubos, yung white seahorse at saka Nizhna seahorse. Next slide. Sa life history naman, yung mga infants naman ay nag-umpis 0 to 6 weeks yung infants. Yung kanilang pagkain naman ay brine shrimps. Tapos yung kanilang growth is 4 times na mas mabilis sa kanilang size. Yung mortality naman nila ay mataas, which is yung isa sa dahilan ng kanilang pag-aubos yung predators tsaka ocean currents. Yung ocean currents naman siguro yung maliliit na yung infant seahorse is na dadala ng ocean currents sa ibang lugar, which is nababago yung temperature kaya namamatay yung mga infants. Sa juvenile naman 6 weeks to 4 months yung growth nila naman ay mabilis. Dito naman nagkakaroon na sila ng pouch, yung lagayan ng itlog ng babaeng seahorse. Yung size naman nito ay 11 to 13 inches. Yung mortality naman is mabilis din. Isa sa dahilan ay yung kanilang outer bone, which parang sa paningin ng mga predators, masarap yung kanilang outer bone. Kaya kinakain sila. Yung habitat naman nila ay yung sargassums, latter, corals, tsaka mga sponges. Sa sub-adults naman, 4 to 6 months. Yung growths naman nila ay mabagal na. Tapos yung mga lalaki, yung kanilang pouch ay kompleto na. Dito, pwede na silang mag-mate. Sa mortality naman, ay storm stress tsaka exhaustion. Sa adults naman, yung growth nila ay stop na. Max size na. Tapos, pwede na silang mag-breeding tsaka fully mature na sila. Pwede na silang magparami sa broodstock. Yung maturity naman ng seahorse ay 100 days. Then, pag umabot yung temperature ng tubig na 26 to 28 degrees Celsius, pwede na silang mag-reproduction. Yung mga wild or yung F1 generations, dapat inaalagaan sila sa 2 by 2 4 meter cages, or sa indoor tanks naman ay 2 by 2 by 1.5 meters. Sa 6 naman ay juices or separate sexes spawning. Kada taon sila ay nanganganak or nagpaparami. Mostly tuwing August hanggang November inay sa Vietnam. Then September to December ay sa Pilipinas, which is yung mga babae yung kanilang itlog ay nilalagay na sa pouch ng lalaki. Din nagbubuntis sila na 2 to 4 weeks. Nanganganak tuwing gabi kahit walang nagpapanak. Yung fecundity. Halos 70% na nangingitlog dito yung seahorse. 10 to 12 beses sila nangingitlog kada taon. Yung isa namang babae ay kayang mag-itlog ng hundreds. Din yung habang tumatanda sila ay babawas yung kanilang kakayahan para mangitlog ng parami. Next slide. Sa hatchery naman, kailangan sila ay nasa small tanks with 2 cube meter. Din yung lalim 0.6 to 1 meter. Yung mga fry naman or 1 day old, kailangan ilipat sa indoor tanks na may 0.5 cubic meter na may dong biofilter, UV, ozone, tapos 1 to 2 per liter density. Sa nursery naman, kailangan yung mga seahorse or yung mga wild 17 to 15 days. Yung mga juveniles, kailangan sa 2 to 6 cubic meter or 0.8 to 1 meter deep. Sa outdoor tanks naman, kailangan mayroon din silang harang para di masyadong maliwanag. baka pwede yung mag-cause ng sakit o paninibago sa kanilang behavior. Sa grow out naman, kailangan yung tank size 5 to 20 cubic meter. Yung lalim naman ay 0.8 to 1 meter. Sa indoor tanks naman, kailangan 2 to 4 cubic meter. Yung indoor tanks ay or outdoor ay dapat nasa kalmadong surrounding. Din yung sa stocking, 500 per cubic meter dapat nag-umpisa din hanggang sa matapos yung dapat 200 per cubic meter hanggang matapos na yun. So, service naman, pagkatapos ng isang taon, so, kailangan naman silang pakainin ng mga maliliit na crustaceans, kagaya ng mga Calonus, Acacia, o Tuna. Sa optimum parameters naman, yung salinity, Ura halin 9 to 37 ppt dun sa normal seawaters. Dun sa juvenile, nabubuhay yung juveniles ay 15 ppt pababa. Din yung adults, kailangan hindi tataas ng 6 ppt, dapat pababa yung kanyang salinity. Sa temperature naman, yung pinakatamang temperature niya ay yung mostly sa seahorse ay 28 degrees Celsius. Then, kapag yung temperature ay umabot ng 20 degrees Celsius or yung kanilang pH ay 6.5 to 8.0, doon sila nagsisimulang magparami. So, sa dissolved oxygen naman, kailangan mapanatili yung 3 mg per liter, especially during hatching. Din sa light intensity naman, yung range ng light intensity is 1,000 to 10,000 lux para sa normal growth. Din ito naman yung mga pwedeng dahilan pag hindi tama yung light intensity. Kapag masyado namang madilim, mostly sa seahorse, ay nabubulag yung mga seahorse. Din kapag masyado namang liwanag, nagkakaroon sila ng sakit tsaka mga abnormalities. Next slide.
So last is yung sea bass. Sea bass is a fast-growing euryhaline fish known as barramundi or apahap, valued for its mild flavor, firm white meat, and ability to live in fresh, brackish, and marine waters. So, sea bass are large carnivorous fish found in Indo-West Pacific region and is highly valued in aquaculture and food. Life history. Sea bass start life as males and many later change into females as they get older. They lay eggs in the open sea and the eggs float until they hatch into tiny larvae. And these larvae drift towards the coast, grow into juveniles in mangroves and estuaries, then move back to the sea as adult to spawn again. So yung sea bass is lumalaki siya kaya niya lumaki ng 2 meters or 6 feet and kaya niya din tumimbang ng hanggang 60 kilograms. Matagal din yung life nila hanggang 20 years. Broodstock. Source, wild caught adults. Sa hatchery naman, redfish or yung preferred for long-term breeding programs. Maturity, males mature at 1 to 2 years. Female matures at 3 to 4 years after changing from male to female. So, sa una, 1 to 2 years muna sila na male tapos mag-change sila na female. Yan, the rest na yun ang life nila. Ideal condition is temperature of 27 to 30 degrees Celsius, salinity of 28 to 35 ppt, tank density 3 to 5 kilogram per cubic meter. Water quality, high DO, less than 5 milligram per liter. Stable pH naman is 7.5 to 8.5. And sa lighting naman, mas preferred nila yung low to moderate feeding, high quality pellets na nagko-contain dapat ng 45 to 50% ng protein with supplement with squid, fish, or crustaceans. Kailangan din nilang mapakain ng 1 to 2 times daily to maintain body condition. Breeding or spawning. Sea bass are protandrous or yun nga yung nag-change sila ng gender nila. Sa feeding, high quality pellets na nagko-contain dapat ng 45 to 50% na protein. Supplement with squid, fish, or crustaceans. Feed at least 1 to 2 times daily to maintain body condition. Breeding and spawning, sea bass are protandrous. So larger broodstock are usually females. So nagiging babae nga sila habang tumatagal. Spawning can be in natural or in large tanks or cages, induced or using hormones like HCG or yung human chorionic gonadotrophin or yung LHRH analog or yung luteinizing hormone releasing hormone analog. Next po. Hatchery. The hatchery stage cover eggs to larvae to fry. This is the most sensitive part, needing clean, stable water, and careful feeding. First is yung egg collection and incubation. Collect, rinse, and with iodine and incubate at salinity of 28 to 34 ppt, temperature of 27 to 30 degrees Celsius, stocking 100 to 200 eggs per liter, gentle aeration, and hatch in 12 to 20 hours. Next is larval rearing. Day 0 to day 2, no feeding. Day 2 to 3, start rotifers. Use green waters. Then day 10 to 12, add artemia. Shift gradually. Last is day 20 to 25, start microdiet, reduce live feeds. Next naman is water quality. Temperature nga dapat is 27 to 30 degrees Celsius. Salinity of 28 to 34 parts per thousand. DO of less than 5 milligram per liter and pH level of 7.8 to 8.5. Gentle aeration, stable condition, green water. Next is cannibalism control. So yung cannibalism control is nag-start siya around day 20 pataas. So para maiwasan yung cannibalism, feed regularly, remove big individuals, size grade. Survival rate is 15 to 40% depending on management. Last is output. After 25 to 30 days, yung fry, magiging 1 to 2 cm na siya. Yung size niya ready for nursery na. Next slide. So nursery stage focuses on growing sea bass fry into stronger fingerlings that ready for grow out ponds or cages. This stage is crucial because sea bass juveniles are sensitive and prone to cannibalism if not managed well. So ang purpose ng nursery is to strengthen fry, improve survival, increase size to reduce cannibalism, and prepare fingerlings for grow out conditions. Nursery systems. Sea bass can raised in tanks, cement or fiberglass, earthen ponds, net cages or hapa nets, RAS or yung recirculating aquaculture system. Each system must maintain clean and stable water. Sa stocking density naman nito, yung tanks sa tanks dapat ay 20 to 40 lang yung fish per square meter. Tapos sa ponds naman, 15 to 25 fish per square meter. Sa cages naman or hapas, 50 to 100 fish per cubic meter. Lower densities improve growth and reduce stress. Feeding management, small floating pellets, protein 40 to 45%. Feeding frequency is 3 to 4 times daily and avoid overfeeding to prevent water pollution. Next slide. And sa water quality naman sa nursery, sa water requirements naman, yung temperature niya is dapat 27 to 31 degrees Celsius, salinity of 10 to 25 ppt, DO niya is ganun pa din, less than 5 milligram per liter, and yung pH level is 7.5 to 8.5. And weekly or daily water exchange depending on the system. Stable water quality is essential for fast growth. Health management naman is regular removal of dead fish, monitor for parasites, keep stress low, and maintain good aeration. Sa grading naman, frequent size grading every 5 to 7 days is required because sea bass juveniles grow at different rates, show strong cannibalistic behavior. So, kailangan i-separate yung big and small fish para ma-improve yung survival. Duration, the nursery stage usually lasts 4 to 6 weeks depending on growth rate and target size. Target output naman dito is yung fingerlings kailangan niya maka 5 to 10 centimeter. Then yung healthy, uniform size fish and ready to transfer to grow out ponds or sea cages. Next slide. Grow out. Grow out is stage where sea bass fingerlings are raised until reach market size, which is 1.2 kilogram or 600 grams. This stage is done in ponds, cages, tanks, or RAS. Good feeding, water quality, and density management are essential for fast growth and high survival. And yung purpose din ng grow out stage is to grow fingerlings into marketable fish and to achieve uniform size, that fast growth, and good flesh quality. Grow out systems. Sea bass can be grown in sea cages, brackish ponds, concrete tanks, and RAS facilities. Each system requires proper aeration and stable water quality. Next slide. Stocking density. Sea cages, 10 to 20 fish per cubic meter. Brackish pond, 3 to 5 fish per square meter. Tanks or RAS is 20 to 30 kilogram per cubic meter depending on filtration strength. Lower density leads to faster growth and less disease risk. Feeding, pelleted feed or yung floating or slow sinking. Protein, sa juveniles, 40 to 45%, sa adults naman is 35 to 40%. Feeding frequency, 2 to 3 times a day. Method, feed to satiation but avoid overfeeding. VCR or yung feed conversion ratio. Water quality requirements, temperature of 27 to 32 degrees Celsius, salinity of 10 to 30 ppt. Yung best naman na salinity niya is 15 to 25 ppt. Dissolved oxygen, less than 5 milligram per liter. pH level of 7.5 to 8.5 pa rin. Regular water exchange sa pond and cages. Stable and clean water leads to fast growth. Management practices. First is grading. Sort fish every 2 to 3 weeks. Prevent bullying and cannibalism. Maintain uniform size. Monitoring. check for parasites, maintain good aeration, and inspect for off-feed behavior. Biosecurity, limit visitor access, disinfect nets and equipment, avoid mixing batches. Next slide. Common disease issues. Streptococcus or causes erratic swimming, red eyes, Vibrio infection, external parasites, external parasites like flukes and sea lice. So good water quality and low stress reduce disease outbreaks. Growth period naman, 6 to 8 months to reach 600 to 800 grams, 9 to 12 months for 1 kilogram to 1.5 kilogram. Harvesting, done early morning or late afternoon. Dapat pagka mag-harvest, madaling araw or yung pagpagabi na. Fish are starved for 12 to 24 hours before harvest. Use gentle handling to maintain meat quality. Last is market size. Local markets, 400 to 800 grams. Sa restaurants naman is 700 to 1,000 grams. Exports naman is 800 grams to 1.2 kilograms. Conclusion. The high-value marine species such as sea cucumber, pompano, sea urchin, pearl, seahorse, and sea bass are integral to both ecological balance and economic markets, highlighting the needs for sustainable management practices, also pointing their individual characteristics such as reproduction, adaptability, morphology, and their biological processes. Thus, protecting the species ensures their continued availability for future generation while supporting local communities that rely on them for livelihood.
And so, that was the given topic to us. And we all thank you for listening. So please open your cam, guys.